Hey guys, in this video we're going to discuss the Icelandic Gambit in the Scandinavian Defense. After e4, d5, e captures d5, black plays knight to f6, and sometimes white protects the pawn with a c4, and here we enter the gambit after the move e6. So if white wants to be consistent, then capturing the pawn is the best choice. Otherwise it will be impossible to keep the extra pawn, which means that c4 makes no sense. So d captures e6 and black recaptures with the bishop. So we may notice that for the sacrificed pawn, black already has a better development, so two pieces are in the game, while white has not done anything except for pushing the pawn to c4. So here, at very first glance, white may play d4. Yes, it is a playable move, but black gets a strong initiative after that. So black continues with the bishop b4 check, pretty much in the spirit of Scandinavian defense and the gambit that we're discussing here, because black needs a rapid development to justify the missing pawn here. After bishop b4, white has two sensible moves. They are bishop to d2 and knight to c3. Let's have a look at knight to c3 first. So here, black continues with the knight to e4, another aggressive jump, attacking the knight on c3, and now white has to protect it somehow. We may notice that it's not so simple because d4 is under pressure as well. So if white plays something like bishop d2, let's say, it's possible just to capture the pawn on d4. So white basically has an option of playing queen c2 and queen to d3, because playing something like knight e2 also doesn't look very good, because c4 is hanging, and also after knight to e2 position is so ugly that there may be also a problem with the f2 at some point. So if white decides to protect the knight on c3 with the queen d3, there is very annoying bishop to f5 move, and now the queen is a target. So queen c2 looks a bit better, because now if black plays something like bishop f5, there is at least bishop to d3. And now it's possible to capture on d4 immediately, but I believe that taking on c3 with the knight is even more convincing, because after b captures c3 and queen to d4, we have very nice position. So pawn c3 is pinned twice, so it's definitely impossible to capture the queen, and if white decides to take the bishop, then the rook drops. So c3 is hanging again. If white plays something like knight to e2, it's possible to capture on c4, for example, with the queen, because c3 was still pinned. And if white protects the pawn with the bishop b2, then there is just a queen e5 check, and after bishop e2, bishop to c5, we may notice that black has solved all the problems already, and only white is suffering here because of the pawn structure. After something like knight to f3, queen to f6, castling, knight goes to c6, and for example rook a to d1 and castling, it's clear that black is simply better in this case. Now let's have a look at the bishop d2 after this check on b4. In this position, bishop goes to d2, attacking the bishop on b4, so prior to doing anything else, black should capture the bishop. Obviously, white recaptures with the queen because d4 is under attack. Here, black continues with the queen e7, exerting some further pressure. Now there is this threat of just taking on c4 with the bishop. White decides to solve this problem with the help of queen to e3. And black continues with the knight to c6. Very sharp continuation, allowing white to play d5 at any moment. But we should understand that black has some tricks here. For example, this knight can jump to g4, attacking the queen. This knight from c6 can jump to b4, creating this threat of knight to c2 fork. So before playing d5, white may consider playing something like bishop to e2, finally closing the e-file, so there is no threat of a discovered check. And in this situation, black continues with the queen to b4. It's just one of the examples. There are many possibilities how black can develop the initiative. And after knight to c3, black simply castles. So that is one of the typical positions for this gambit. So objectively speaking, white should be better, but only in case white plays the accurate moves. And if you are not aware what to do in this position, then it's pretty hard to find all that moves over the board. For example, after d5 here, black may continue with the rook to e8, which is just a pure sacrifice of the piece here. And after d takes c6, black simply recaptures with the pawn. So yes, white is a minor piece up, but black has a lot of targets here. There is already a compensation, which is one pawn, and we can notice that c4 is hanging, b2 is hanging, so black is going to grab even more. For instance, king goes to f1, trying to avoid all the problems connected with the pinned bishop on e2. Black captures on c4, queen goes away to c1, and the knight jumps to e4. This is the example from one of the interesting games we're following here. And we may notice that although white is a minor piece up, it's really hard to complete a development. White decided to capture on e4. Black recaptured with the rook. Now bishop e2 is under pressure. After bishop c4 and rook takes c4, position was simplified, but it doesn't mean that it's really easy to play it with white. So after queen to e3, rook to c2, controlling the second rank and exerting even more pressure on b2, white decided to ignore that pawn and continue with the knight f3, controlling d2 square, so preventing rook d8 to d2 move. Black captured on b2, increasing the material compensation for missing minor piece, and after rook to e1, eliminated even the a2 pawn. So this position is still quite hard to evaluate, but black is doing not that bad indeed. Let's have a look now to the knight f3 possibility. It's another way for white to react to black's bishop captures e6 move, in which case white delays the occupation of the center, trying to complete the development faster if compared to the d4 line. So here, white plays knight to f3, intending just to play something like bishop e2 the next move and then castle. And black may continue with the queen e7. There is also another option like c5, trying to control d4 square and to play it in a more positional manner, but queen e7 looks also pretty logical, creating again a threat of bishop takes c4. In this case, something like bishop e2 will not help because bishop will be pinned and black has an option of taking on c4. So like queen a4 check, attacking the king and the bishop doesn't work because of simple b5 move. So after queen to e7, white's only natural defense of the pawn is queen to e2. And black may continue with the knight to c6. And after d4, let's say it's possible to try different things. For example, the move like bishop to f5 deserves attention because in this case, bishop now controls c2 and black is ready to jump with the knight to b4, the next move creating a threat of knight to c2 or knight to d3, in which case even the exchange of queens will not solve all white's problems immediately because black has an advantage in development. Another possibility here is again to try castling, and after d5 we get something similar to the previous line we have discussed. In this case, queen jumps to b4 first, after knight to c3, bishop goes away, and after d takes c6, once again we deal with the pure sacrifice of the piece for initiative and the attack. For example, after bishop to c5, position looks really scary for white. As I said before, objectively speaking, it should be better for white, but only in case white makes a lot of accurate moves in a row, which is a challenge, obviously. Is there a chance for white to avoid all these complications? Well, basically, there is a very simple solution, so let's have a look at it. So, after moves e4, d5, e captures d5, and knight to f6, in my opinion, the easiest way is just not to play c4. Because yes, you can keep the pawn for some time, but in this case, you have to learn a lot of different sharp lines, starting with e6 or maybe c6. From a practical point of view, in my opinion, it makes no sense. Because after a simple d4 move, for example, white is usually getting a slight edge, and from a practical point of view, it's pretty much risk-free position. So that is exactly what I'm usually doing in this situation against knight to f6. The point is we get the pawn structure, which is typical for different openings as well. For example, Caro-Kann or Elohim defense. And it's clear that if you put your pieces on the right positions, you're just enjoying a slight advantage because of the better control over the center. That's basically it about this gambit. Thanks for watching and see you next videos.